So I'd like to begin today actually by thanking the College of New Jersey, Stockton University, and Georgian Court University, as well as the distinguished faculty and staff at the Center for Future Educators, sponsored by the New Jersey Education Association, for having me speak with you at the New Jersey Future Educators Association Spring 2020 Virtual Conference, Recreated Innovative Classrooms, as we welcome all of our future educators into a very new era of education. I'd love to connect with as many of you as possible, so I've put my social handles on this screen, so feel free to reach out if I don't have an opportunity to answer your question today. But you can also put any questions for me in the Q&A and in the chat box, and I'll do my best to try to respond during this time. So education truly is an endurance sport. It requires an energy that one can only attain through true grit, commitment, and community. And I'd like to welcome you to my community. So my professional learning journey begins not at Rutgers University, not at Oxford, not at Haddonfield Memorial High School, but it actually begins with my parents, who haven't even made this screen, at birth, my first educators. But my professional space really began in Voorhees Township Schools in 1991. And I have listed here, not everyone, it's not a full comprehensive list, but it has fairly good coverage of all of the educators in my life who continue to support my journey. And I can go through this list and tell you a story about Mrs. Englesby first grade classroom, or Gifted and Talented with Mrs. Rabin, or Coach Worthington's health and PE classes, Don't Talk About It, Be About It, or Dr. Bartell's Shakespeare and Race at Rutgers College. And all of these stories and these moments along my journey have made me who I am. And I implore you to make note of all of the individuals and all of the moments who make you you. Because you are the learner you will be the educator you are because of these experiences. And I couldn't stress that enough, to place an emphasis on process, not product. And for me, the process is most important, especially as an educator. And so this is my beautiful timeline. I made it a point on Teacher Appreciation Week to do a Facebook Live to thank every educator in my life. It took about an hour and I needed more time. So I again encourage you to do the same. But my greatest teachers have been my students. So becoming an educator challenges you in ways that are deeply human and offers infinite opportunity for growth and high probability of impact. When I have done the math on my rosters since my first year of teaching 11 years ago, I've taught 1,533 plus students. So I didn't include any of my study halls, but all of those spaces are learning spaces, and we can talk about that another day. But that important socialization, I'll talk about it now. Those moments are integral to your learning. But when I look at this number, I think about the 1,533 plus stories that I'm a part of. And then I think about the community beyond this number. So if we think about the parents and guardians and families beyond this number, we can double that. And then when I think about the lessons that students learn in my classroom, I believe that that reaches infinite. And as an educator, you can move mountains with one simple action. And I'd like to share with you a story about a student who sent me a message one day ago. So as the New Jersey State Teacher of the Year, I have been conducting outreach and have become a public figure in the world of education. And for me, at times, this can be really overwhelming. And what keeps me grounded would be the 1,533 students, but really it can just be one. And if you can move one, you can move many. And last evening, I received a message from a former student, and I'd like for you to humor me in this story. So first, I received this meme And it was from a student that I taught in my very first year of teaching. And my first year of teaching presented many challenges. It was incredibly rewarding, but there was so much that I was figuring out as a learner. And sometimes I think it's a blur, and then sometimes I have these really vivid memories, and then sometimes I'm really dependent on others for those memories. So I get that message, and I'm not really sure what that means. And then it's followed by a long text. So I'm going to read this to you, okay, via Facebook Messenger. I saw this today and thought about you. I feel that it was a great depiction of what you did for me. I wanted to share. You're the first teacher that encouraged me to use my time in school as an outlet. I'm not sure if you remember what I'm talking about, but your kindness on that one day changed me forever. I was very unhappy for a long time. I walked into your classroom feeling worse than ever. You put a paper and pen on my desk and just asked me to write about the way I felt. You never said anything after. You never pressured me to say anything that made me uncomfortable. You just smiled at me and asked me to let it all out. I know I probably seemed very ungrateful. I never appropriately thanked you. I just wanted to change that. You had a massive impact on my life, and I'm so grateful for everything you've had to offer. Thank you. So when I look back to this moment, I can remember how this student felt. I can remember wanting to reach this student, but also trying to navigate my own challenges as a first-year educator. But if there's anything that I've always known is that we put human beings before content. And when I think about this message and this student's journey, I think about how grateful I am to have had him in my life. And when I think about this moment, I'm so honored that I could be part of his journey. He just recently graduated from Stockton University in elementary education, and he will be a teacher and can move mountains for other students. So that impact, that one moment, that one piece of paper, that one pen, that one smile, can go incredibly far. And I've always said that if you want to help people become a teacher, and if you want to give back to your community, become a teacher in your community. So I'm really grateful that you're here with me today as we can walk through other ways that we can make an impact right from our classroom. And of that 1533, I can think of an Instagram post of my student from many moons ago, reading Jane Eyre on the beach, talking about how this book changed his life. Or I can think about the student who was my wedding planner the day of and helped me plan the event because she now studies at Muhlenberg University and does stage management. And thinking about all of these connections that we've had, and that being an innovative teacher and being in an innovative classroom means making connections and always capitalizing on those relationships to help others. So that's that 1533 tenfold. So as New Jersey State Teacher of the Year, this has been my most recent test in my tenure. As I said, this role has put me on a public platform, and I've had to accept both the charges and challenges as the State Teacher of the Year. This role has not only been a great honor, but also a call to action. And it's always been my hope to share this platform with as many educators, and that includes you, learners and future educators, to celebrate and elevate and recognize the great work happening in all classrooms across the state. And that includes your classroom and what's happening now. I believe deeply in the individuals and the educators serving our 1.4 million students. And I'm so incredibly honored that you want to join the ranks of these incredible change makers and forward thinkers and innovative educators. So something that I really value about being an innovative educator is welcoming diversity and also focusing my instruction on students. And I think it's important that as an educator, you always have your own philosophy of practice. And this is something that's cultivated over time. This started in 1991 for me. So this started for you when, and actually you might not even have been born yet as I'm speaking, but this started whenever you entered a classroom. Your first moments in learning really help shape your philosophy of education, and you should be molding that and crafting that now. And it's something that's malleable and will change throughout your entire life and your career. So these are just some tenets of what's important to me. And to me, diversity is diverse thought. And I think that's really important to establish early on. So one, I think you need to know who you are teaching in order to center your instruction. Again, human beings before content, and that's incredibly important. I think too, you have to examine what you are teaching and why that content matters. Those are hard questions. You need to really look at the content, look at how you're approaching information, and ask yourself why. Ask yourself, why does this matter? Why should our students, why should you be engaging in certain programs of study, and how will that benefit you and your community and society at large? I think teachers have to ask these hard questions so our students can do the same. For our students to do the same, we have to create an environment of spirited inquiry. So spirited inquiry means asking the questions that you think maybe have already been answered, but you're going to go for it anyway because you really want to know and you want to hear it in a certain way and you want to have that for yourself. Spirited inquiry is being excited that with one answer becomes another question. And so for me, welcoming diverse thought means that you have to have spirited inquiry. 4, once you've examined the content and you've created this environment, you have to go beyond the content and connect with others. So today, when you're in your workshops, and this is really what this slide is all about, is that these workshops, when you have this moment to engage with others and ask questions, go beyond what's being offered, make connections, and see how you can apply that to your own world. And I think that's incredibly important, because if we can't apply our learning, right, if we can't connect it with other ways of learning, what's the point? And I think that's a really simple question that we need to be asking ourselves, right? What's the intent behind our learning, our own objectives? And 5, build authentic and enduring relationships. When I think about that message from my student from 11 years ago, this authentic and enduring relationship that we've built is really special to me. And this is just one story of many. And before I went on my sabbatical, all of my students wrote me these letters and put them into envelopes for every month of my sabbatical. So I have been out of the classroom from January to June, and we were returning to classroom in the fall. And I knew that would be a really difficult time for me, and so did my students, because for me, in order to thrive and excel, my relationships are key. Those connections are key. And so I would have to recreate my lens, my whole world. So my authentic and enduring relationships are still with me, and I hold them near and dear to my heart. And those relationships can start today. So keep that in mind as you're learning, that you're not learning alone whatsoever. You're learning with a great community, and that's really important to place high value on. What I've been able to do through this philosophy of welcoming diversity and seeing everything through a social justice lens, asking yourself if something is right, if something's wrong, working through and negotiating, right? That lens has really enabled me, as well as my students, to focus on equity and social responsibility initiatives. I'm not going to walk through all of these examples, but this is a picture of my students and colleagues and volunteers from the community through a program called Stand with Camden. We're a volunteer organization where my students partner with over 10 organizations in Camden County to give back and work with others in the community in order to improve the quality of life, right, and for others, and also provide opportunities that might not be available to all. And so this is just one example of how we've integrated that. But also in my classroom guidelines, there are moments that call on students to see the world through a social justice lens. My curriculum for Greek drama and Shakespeare, I challenge my students to see beyond the content. So it's not just simply a play, but it's a connection to our world. And so that's really important. I'd say my most exciting moment as a classroom educator is when my students took content beyond our classroom and were able to implement a project much larger than ourselves that had international impact and continues to impact others today. So that would be our Get Grind to Emory campaign through the World Literature Curriculum, which I will talk about in a few moments. But anything is possible from a classroom. And for me, what that means is that we have to recreate how we see our roles. And I think that's not something that is a result of COVID-19 school closures. I think we have to recreate how we see our roles as educators with every new moment, with every new opportunity, through every new experience. We have to create how we see ourselves and our world because we have to be flexible. And so for me, I've defined who I am over the years for myself as an educator, but this list is ongoing. So when I started as an educator, I always saw myself as a public servant. I saw myself as a global citizen, a community partner, a student advocate, a teacher advocate, an opportunity maker, and a change agent. And if we were with each other today, we would do call and response, and I'd ask you to also own these titles, these identities as your own, and then find your own space as a learner and educator. And I would actually call on all of the learners, so that's teachers included here, to think about how you define yourself as an educator and how that continues to change throughout your career and every learning experience. That could change today. Today you could walk away from this conference and say to yourself, okay, like, I am an opportunity maker. I brought my students to this virtual space to collaborate and learn, and I created that opportunity. If you're a student in here and you see, okay, I'm learning something where I could be a change agent, and what does that look like, and how can I do that, and how can I grow into that identity? So for me, all of this has been over the course of my career, and I'm constantly recreating who I am, but what I do know is that I can be anything as an educator. And I cannot think of anything more exciting than a role that provides you, right, that ability to be anything. And so I really encourage you to keep thinking about, what are your philosophies as a learner? Who could you be as an educator? And what might that look like as you go through the different sessions today? So this slide says go beyond the book, but what I'm going to say here is go beyond the content, go beyond the breakout session, go beyond what you're being asked to do, and do more. You can. And so I have two pictures here, and I love them both equally. So to the left, or my left, your right, the F. Otto Haas stage from the Art and Theater is my beloved team Shakespeare from my Shakespeare course. And my students and I collaborate with multiple theater companies as a part of our English class to provide support to the theater community in the Philadelphia and South Jersey region as a part of our assessments. So all of our assessment work actually supports the theater community, and we have this really great mutual relationship, and we go beyond the content, beyond the classroom, and we ask ourselves, why does this matter and how can we support the arts? And this is just our English class, but my students embrace the BARD because they know that they can go beyond and do more. The photo to my right, your left, are my students who initiated the Get Grind to Emory campaign, which I had alluded to 2 slides before I said, okay, like, who am I as an educator? As an educator, I had to ask myself, like, how do I support my students? And my students wanted to make a difference and make a change. And so the man in the center is Grang Bukpyo, and my students and I every year read A Long Way Gone, Memoirs of a Boy Soldier as their summer reading. And in 2015, I had my students connect with a former child soldier from South Sudan, and he was currently in Kenya at the time getting his bachelor's degree. And he shared his story with my students. And it was this really incredible opportunity to go beyond the book, to go beyond the content, and create this human connection, right? This is going back to my philosophy as an educator. And if there's anything you should have noticed already, is that everything comes full circle, right? That's actually a Shakespeare quote, "The wheel has come full circle." Anyway, I digress. So we created this relationship with Garang, and he started exchanging letters with my students, or emails, excuse me, and over the years, we would continue this conversation about the human element beyond the page. So in 2018, Garang had decided to apply for his master's degree and was accepted to Emory University. And I had actually written his recommendation letter. And about a week around this time, May of 2018, at the junior prom, my students were asking me, well, how is Garang going to attend Emory? Like, does he get a scholarship? What's happening? So I contacted Emory and found out that he wasn't given a full scholarship package because he's an international student, and there's some complications with that offering for a master's degree. So my students immediately thought that wasn't right, and I did too. So we decided to take action. And what we had realized was that this was a really big task. We would have to pull on every community, especially our own, but going far beyond our community. And we took action. And so our first thought was like, okay, we're gonna get every big celebrity, and they're going to also believe in our philosophy that we have to do the right thing because we support education and being an opportunity maker, and that he's accepted this development program and he can change the world by earning this degree, and it's crickets. And so we're like, okay, new plan. We're gonna knock on doors. We're gonna knock on doors. And we did knock on doors, and we had to prove access to $90,000. So in 3 weeks, my students raised $21,000 by knocking on doors. And so we were able to prove to Emory that we had the funds. It was really incredible. And if you want to learn more about this story, you can actually Google "Get Garang to Emory." And if someone can put that in the chat or find a link, but "Get Garang to Emory" was really incredible. So we had the funds, and then we had to apply for the visa, and it was this really big project. But my students had to implement every skill they ever learned in every course up until that moment, and had to learn new skills. And so this was a really big endeavor. But I, as an educator, you as an educator, have to be ready for these opportunities to support your students in whatever they can dream. Because if you can dream it, you can do it. And I think that's really important. And so I had to be ready as an educator to support my students in this endeavor, and we did it. On August 17th, Garang arrives in Atlanta, and he started his program on August 27th of 2018. And 2 weeks ago, he earned and graduated from the Laney Graduate School Master's Development Program with his first master's degree, and will be here 1 more year for a second master's degree, and earned a full fellowship to support that second master's degree. And all of that happened from reading a book in one small town and one small group of students and one community that really came together around education and creating opportunity for others. And Garang will go back to South Sudan and will create more opportunities in his own country. And he's even broken ground on the Haddonfield Community Center, which is with a library and media center and education space in his home village, Awil. And so this is really exciting. And all of this comes from this philosophy, right, that we can do anything from a classroom. You can be anything as an educator. And so as a community organizer in this way, right, something really great happened. And you can do that very same work with and for your own students and your community. And so for me, the implications for teaching is, how do we cultivate a climate of diverse thinkers? This is something you need to think about today. And for everyone who's leading the workshops, how do you cultivate this climate of differentiated thinking and learning and creativity? And this is on you. This is really important that we think about our culture and climate in our classrooms. How do we reimagine curriculums to engage students in critical social action? I'm getting excited just talking about it. Critical social action is imperative. Being in a school, being part of any learning community, whether it's being in the physical space or the virtual space, means that you're engaging in bettering yourself to better others. I mean, that's critical social action. So I hope that today, throughout this conference, you ask yourself, what does this mean for me within and beyond my school? And whatever your course is in your journey, what does it mean for you to engage in critical social action? And this is recreative, innovative classrooms. This is what recreated, innovative classrooms do, is that they engage in critical social action and they reimagine what is possible. For me, my platform was to share my access to power, and that is also incredibly important. So for us to be successful in creative, innovative classrooms, and these recreated spaces, we have to share our access to knowledge, and because knowledge is power. So when I say how to share my access to power, how to share my access to knowledge, that's something you should always be considering, because today is an opportunity. You've been granted this opportunity to learn. It is a privilege to learn. And it is your responsibility to share what you learn. And that collective compassion and deliberate optimism will take us very far. By activating ideas and advocating for others, we can mobilize communities to serve the greater good. And for me, this has always been my vision as an educator, and I've been able to take that into being the New Jersey State Teacher of the Year. And I continue to do that work as I serve New Jersey. What I ask of you is that when you're learning today, that you connect with your peers. So the hashtag for this conference is hashtag NJFEA Spring 2020. So that is the actual conference itself. And using that hashtag on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, where you're most likely living right now, Snapchat, TikTok, whatever it might be, making connections with students and learners from schools beyond your community and making new friends, because being a connected educator will really benefit you now and in the future. And there are so many people you can connect with today, so I really ask you to take advantage of this opportunity. Again, there are over 200,000 educators serving and empowering the 1.4 million students. So be part of that community. It's very exciting, and it's the greatest honor of my life being able to serve that community. And we need you as future educators to join this conversation and to really join our positive messaging and the professional learning, because you are the difference. And I want to celebrate your forward thinking, your innovative and transformative ideas as we shift the perception of the profession as the change makers we need for the future. So may the force be with you, New Jersey Future Educators Association. Just some advice as we depart. My grandma Rosie always said, listen to learn and learn to listen. Today is the day for listening and learning from one another. Risk. Explore everything. Ask the question. Embrace spirited inquiry today. Everyone will face a challenge and stretch. Embrace that. This conference has multiple attendees, has multiple workshops. There's going to be some challenges in the day. Embrace that and learn in whatever space you can. Each of us has different strengths. Find the good and praise it. Let go of judgment and criticism of yourself and others, especially the content. The only way to do something wrong is to not try at all. You teach and learn as humans. And something that's always been very important is one to embrace that I am vulnerable, but inherently in the word vulnerable is the word able. So today you are able, and you are able to learn, and you are able to give back. And I am very grateful to be in the company of our future educators. So thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy your day of learning with the New Jersey Future Educators Association.